Something on the set really quick, Jay. Give us just a second.
Setting the stage for your Georgia Saturday, this is DawgNation Game Day, live from Jittery Joe's in Athens. Brought to you by R.S. Andrews, Kroger, Pella Windows and Doors, Cercheros, Lassiter Tractor, the UGA Bookstore, and Jittery Joe's Coffee. Now here's your host, Kaylee Mansell.
Good morning, Dawg Nation, and welcome to the DawgNation Game Day show. Go ahead, take a look at this stadium, newly renovated. The battlefield is set for today's matchup against Tennessee Tech. It's crazy to think it's the only home game this month, home opener, also today's Letterman game, so expect to see all of your favorite alums and former players in the crowd tonight. As always, I'm Kaylee Mansell, and we are here live from the Jittery Joe's downtown location. New show, same place. Excited to be here. If you're in downtown Athens, make sure to come by, check it out, have a great cup of coffee, and enjoy the home opener with us. Here's what we've got going on today's DawgNation Game Day. Starting with the overarching storylines, what's the most important things we need to look at in today's matchup? Then we're going to have Connor Riley join us live from Sanford Stadium, give us the sights and sounds of the morning this far. Then Kaylee's Keys is back. What do we want to see out of the Dogs today? What is the most important? And then the players are going to play. We saw last week the freshmen really flashed. I expect to see the same thing out of today. Doesn't matter what year you are, talent shines. And I think we're going to see that with the freshman class today. And then I am so excited to announce that we're going to have Davin Bellamy be a part of the pregame show. We'll also be on Brandon Adams' postgame show later. So awesome to have some player insight. He's going to join us. And then, of course, with it being the first home game, got to have some Sentell's intel because 2026s and 2027s are going to be out on the scene today. They're the VIPs in the stadium for the matchup against Tennessee Tech. Then, of course, we will wrap up with today's impact players as well as our Kroger Dog Walk so you can get a look at the team. But first, let's start with this. The storylines for today's game. I mean, you could go a multitude of ways considering the opponent. I think the first thing for me is when you look at this matchup from the fan base, from the media, it's easy to be a little bit more relaxed just because it's not an opponent where you're necessarily worried about the outcome of the game. But the reason why Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football is because he doesn't see the game in that way. He sees it as any other opponent and a way for the team to get better. When asked about the matchup earlier this week, this is what Kirby Smart had to say.
Does he still want the check?
He said he absolutely did. He said, but there's no other way really for them to do it.
Right. Well, that's my point. I mean, everybody can put me in a pigeonhole of, well, Kirby believes in these games, Kirby doesn't believe in these games. I believe in the sport of football. And if you told me that the sport of football is going to lose programs because they can't sustain without the financial help, then I want to support that. I also want the financial support of our fan base. And if you polled them, they'd rather play, Clemson, Notre Dame, every week play somebody. And I respect that too. I enjoy that. I coached in the NFL. I've been around those kind of leagues. I mean, I'm sensitive to both of those things. I just think that if we're going to lose football at a lower level because of financial reasons, I'd rather try to sustain those programs and keep them up. Which, by the way, the quarterback he brought in played really well too, and is a really good athlete. And you know, I mean, I hate it for the other kid because obviously he was the starter.
A very Kirby Smart-esque answer, exactly what you would expect. A coach that loves the game of football. I thought he brought out some great points there. I think the next thing, and one thing that we're going to talk to Connor Riley about here in just a minute, is I think help is one of the most important aspects. No Michael Williams, potentially no Warren Brinson. With the SEC schedule starting next week and then having Alabama in the weeks to follow, you want your guys, especially on the line of scrimmage, to be as healthy as possible, which leads me to my next point. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we want to see as many of the young guys get touches as possible, especially the excitement that they gave us last week between Nate Frazier and KJ Bolden. I think there's a level of excitement around this freshman class that we haven't had in a really long time, so I want to see them get out there. But with that, let's go ahead and get Connor Riley on the Game Day Show. He is live from Sanford Stadium. Connor, I want to start with the look of the new stadium. This is the first time we're going to get a glance of it. What are your thoughts on it? What's different?
Yeah, we're in the new press box here in Sanford Stadium. It looks different. It's a much longer walk to the post-game press conference area, but the sun is shining here. You got a chance to take a lap around the stadium earlier today. Dog walk just concluded. It's an exciting time to be here in Athens, and I think people are really looking forward to today's game.
Also, another thing that's going to be different about today is Athens is finally going to have beer sales in the stadium. Can you already see that impact yet?
Yeah, they've already clearly got lined up vendors that are selling beer at $10, $11, and $12. They have both beer and seltzer if beer is not necessarily your thing. But it's an exciting day for the community. I know Creature Comforts has worked a long time for this. And so to see this, for fans to finally, I think, get to enjoy it. There were some people that might be a little surprised today that they are officially selling beer in the stadium here. But overall, I think this is only going to further help the fan atmosphere here at Sanford Stadium.
I believe we posted on our DawgNation Instagram that they had 100,000 beers ready to go. Do you think that's enough?
No, I don't. 100,000 is not enough. I think they could have gotten at least 200,000. I mean, that's a little over one beer per person here for the people at the stadium. Obviously, they're kids. You're not going to have them do it. But 100,000, they might run out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to learn the hard way today. But let's go ahead and talk some football. This is personal and also business. Is Trevor Etienne dressed out? Do we think he's going to see the field today?
He dressed out last week in pregame, so taking any conclusions away from that, I don't think would be wise. We'll see. Georgia's elected to keep this in-house. I know that there are some people that think only one reporter asked about it. We've all been inquiring about it. We're all interested in seeing how Georgia goes about doing this. If I had to guess right now, I'd say he plays today, but again, who knows? We'll see. I think getting him some reps, especially given we didn't see him last week, would help him gear up, especially as Georgia has an SEC game next week on the road at Kentucky. And also at the same point in time, and I can't even believe we're saying this week in the season, you don't want to give too much wear and tear to Nate Frazier as a freshman coming in, his first time adjusting to the college game. With what we saw a week ago from Frazier, he's clearly going to be a player for this Georgia team this year. And so I think you treat him almost like a starter today as well, even if he's not going to be the guy that gets the first carry of the game.
I think like last week, one of the position groups that I'm going to be looking most at today is the defensive line. No Michael Williams, I presume. We saw Warren Brinson go down with an injury. What does the rotation at the defensive line look like today? Do you think a lot of young guys are going to get some meaningful reps?
I absolutely do, Kaylee. I think a week ago you saw Tyrion Ingham-Dawkins play 35 snaps, Nazir Stackhouse play 33, Christian Miller play 29. Georgia's going to try really hard to get those guys, to keep those guys in the teens in terms of snaps. Obviously, they're going to need to get out to a big lead and really coast to the end there, because there's two different reasons for this. One, you want to get those young players depth, build depth for the future. See maybe does Joseph Jonah-Ajayi play a big role for you this year? What does, say, Jordan Thomas able to bring? But at the same point in time, you also want to keep the wear and tear off of those interior defensive linemen, because you don't want to wear those guys down over the course of the season. And if you're having to play them a lot of snaps like they did in the first game against Clemson, that does have an additive effect. I don't think they're going to have Michael Williams today. I don't expect Jordan Hall or Xavier McLeod to play either. Warren Brinson, we'll see. I'd be maybe a little surprised if they're going to play him, given they know what they have in him as a senior. So that's going to make you a little bit thinner on the defensive line. Now, it works out for Georgia that they're playing an opponent like Tennessee Tech, where you can, I think, afford to get some of your own players some more reps. But it's going to be critical that Georgia gets out to a big lead, I think, to limit the wear and tear that comes on this defensive line. Because, as you point out, Kaylee, they can't really afford any more injuries in this position group.
So apart from the defensive line, I think we expect to see a lot of the young guys out there on the field today. What position groups can they help with most?
Yeah, I think wide receiver might be an interesting one. We saw late in the game last week, Leonard Humphreys comes in, plays well in relief of Dylan Bell. I'm interested in seeing what we see out of Sokovie White and Nitro Tuggle today, 2 freshman wide receivers. Can they make an impact today and maybe potentially help out? I know you love your North Georgia boys, and Sokovie coming from Cass certainly qualifies as that there. I think the inside linebacker position as well. We saw Justin Williams a week ago get a tackle for loss. Chris Cole is a guy that can move around and do a lot of different things for this defense. Obviously, Georgia's loaded at the inside linebacker position, but I really like what those 2 freshmen did a week ago, and I'm excited to see what they can potentially do more of going forward. And then maybe on the offensive line as well, they bring in a really talented class there. What do you see in guys like a Daniel Calhoun, like a Jaw Jackson? How do they play, and what does Georgia do for them? It's interesting to note Jaw Jackson is a member of Georgia's field goal team, which almost certainly means he's not going to end up redshirting for the Bulldogs this year. So they very clearly have plans for Jaw Jackson, and I'm interested in seeing how they deploy him today to try and further develop him as an offensive lineman.
So since this is the only non-conference opponent until the end of the year when we play UMass and Georgia Tech, I think it's really crucial that we see the backup quarterbacks get reps today. Of course, that's going to have to rely on an early lead from Carson Beck. But Gunnar Stockton, in my mind, is someone that needs to see the field today because we never know what's going to happen throughout the season. If he's potentially going to be the starter next year, game reps in today's game are going to be super crucial for him.
Yeah, this is a massive opportunity for Gunnar Stockton today. Obviously, Carson Beck has to take care of what he has to take care of and get Georgia out to a big lead. But if Georgia's able to do that, I'll be really interested in, say, the third quarter, if Georgia keeps the first-team offense in there and they let Gunnar Stockton have a full drive with that first-team offense. You saw them do that against Florida State in the Orange Bowl last year. Gunnar Stockton is clearly the backup quarterback, and they're going to try and get him reps. As far as Ryan Puglisi and Jaden Rashada, we'll see if they get a chance to throw the ball in the fourth quarter there. But I think today is a massive day for the future of Gunnar Stockton, because if Gunnar's able to play well today, and yes, it's Tennessee Tech, but going back to the 2022 season when Carson Beck came in against Vanderbilt, when he came in against TCU, he looked very good in those opportunities. I think it's a big reason why he went on to be Georgia's starting quarterback. If Gunnar Stockton can make uses of those similar opportunities that are afforded to him, it could help him out greatly to being Georgia's starting quarterback next year.
And you bring up a good point. I'm glad that you mentioned Jaden Rashada, Ryan Puglisi. I expect that hopefully we'll get to see both of them in the fourth quarter. Is there someone that you're hoping to see more than the other when it comes to Rashada and Puglisi?
No, not particularly. I'd be surprised if either one of them throws more than 3 passes. I think, again, this is a redshirt year for both of them to sort of see what they get and build into as players in this system. Gunnar Stockton is so clearly the backup quarterback for this team. I think that those guys are multiple years away from seeing a playing field. Whereas Gunnar, obviously, in the unfortunate event that something happens to Carson, might be put into play this season. But also, as soon as next season, he could well be Georgia's starting quarterback.
All right, Connor, as always, last question to you. When all is said and done today, you're sitting in the press box, listening to your music, writing articles. What are you hoping to see out of this Dawgs team?
I'm an idiot.
Get out to a big lead early, take care of business, have the starters pulled out of the game one drive into the third quarter, and then get those young players some reps. This should be a game where if Georgia's able to establish a running clock in the second half, I think that's a great sign for what Georgia was able to do. Get in, get healthy, get out, and get on to next week when you start SEC play against Kentucky.
All right, Connor, we appreciate your time and look forward to seeing your articles mid-game and after the game on DawgNation.com.
Yep, as always, it was a pleasure, Kaylee.
And that is Connor Riley, my co-host on our Thursday night show, Dawg Nation at Large. If you haven't had the chance to check it out, you can check it out on our Dawg Nation YouTube page or check us out live every Thursday at 7 o'clock. Now, we didn't get to do it last week. We did it last year. I had to bring it back for this game. This is Kaylee's Keys. The name is too good not to do it again. So I think for me, watching last week's game, I am not the girl that blames things on play calling. That's never going to be me. But I do think with today's game, you can be less methodical in the play calling for Carson Beck. I feel like Carson, and Jake Fromm touched on this on his DawgNation Daily appearance, Carson has so much more to offer than what we're allowing him to show, and I know you don't want to show everything you've got at the beginning of the season, but today is a good opportunity to try some different things on the offense. Have some fun with it. Don't give too much away, but this is our time to do the trick plays and let Carson go yard. These sideline passes, they didn't work last week. I don't want to see a lot of that today. I think somebody earlier was telling me that the thing about this team is because there are so many guys who are playmakers, there might be only a time for them 3 times a game to make a play, but we've got guys who are going to make those plays when their name is called upon. So in a game like this, get up early, let Carson do what he does best. Let's not hold back in a game like this. The next thing for me, a common theme throughout the show today, we touched on it with Connor, we touched on it at the beginning. Health is so important. Let the starters get their work in early, get the early lead, get them out of there. The young guys can clearly handle themselves in a game like today. We all want to see the young guys, but we also want to ensure that the veterans, especially the guys on the line of scrimmage, are healthy for when we start the SEC schedule next week against Kentucky and then followed by Alabama. And then last, of course, lean on the young guys, not just KJ, not just Nate. I really want to see the young wide receiver group and Nitro Tuggle, Sokovie White, as well as our young linebackers and Justin Williams and Chris Cole, who did see the field last year. I think games like this are so important for them because there's not nearly as many games for them to be able to play in like there was last year at the beginning of the season. Now, I do want to give a major shout out to Jittery Joe's. So glad to have them as our presenting sponsor for Game Day. Again, you'll see the commemorative cans here that we have on the desk. You can buy those on jitteryjoes.com. Now, we're at the downtown location this year, switched it up from last year. Come join us any home game. We always start the Game Day show 2 hours before kickoff. We're always here earlier. Come have a cup of coffee, come talk football with us, and then if you download the Jittery Joe's app on your phone, you can skip the line and get 10% off your first drink. I was telling our coworkers, I was really excited to come to the game today, but more importantly, I was excited to have a Jittery Joe's cup of coffee. I already went through my first one. I think I swallowed it whole, so make sure you guys come check us out here at the downtown location for Jittery Joe's. It's not too late. We'll be here for quite some time, so please come see us downtown and shout out to Jittery Joe's. Good to be back with them. Now, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. Our very own Cody Chaffins, who's going to be on the field, giving you all the B-roll, giving you all the pictures. He has been doing an incredible job putting these shorts together, and considering what we saw last week in the Clemson game, it was only fair that we had to do a package on the freshmen. Here's what Cody put together earlier this week.
You know, if you're a talented freshman and you can learn, then you can play.
Kirby Smart showed that even the #1 team in the country in the first game of the season against a top 25 ranked opponent is not afraid to let freshman players play. 13 true freshmen took the field against Clemson. Now, to be fair, a big fourth quarter lead helped that number, but there were youngsters getting snaps right off the bat. In fact, freshman KJ Bolden made Georgia's first tackle of the season. Other programs across the country may try to pitch to recruits that you'll have to sit and wait your turn at UGA, but Kirby Smart says that negative recruiting falls flat.
It may get used, but it doesn't work very effectively because we have as many freshman All-Americans and as many freshmen play as anybody in the country. So I don't know how effective it is, but I don't know. I would be interested to see how 13 compared to other years. Obviously, the type of game you play in would dictate that, meaning, you know, last year we probably had more than 13 play because of the score and the differential. A couple years ago against Clemson, we probably didn't have many.
So are freshmen better prepared to play in college now? Smart disagrees with that notion and warns against having a lineup that's too young.
They're having to play out of necessity, having to play out of the fact that we got more transient rosters. I mean, they're not any more ready to play physically, mentally, that disposition. No, not many freshmen are. Let me say this, in our league, playing in our league, SEC to SEC, if you're playing with a lot of freshmen, you're in trouble because they're not physically developed. That doesn't mean one can't do it, but you don't want to be out there playing with a lot of freshmen.
So how are players like KJ Bolden able to be successful in their first college game? Smart gives a couple of reasons. The first, to quote Henry David Thoreau, simplify, simplify.
Yeah, I think Coach Schumann and his defensive staff have done a tremendous job of making our defense adjustable, complex without being complex, and you can play more players that way.
Another safeguard for the freshmen is having old dogs around them. Smart says his leaders are key to making sure that newcomers rise to the Georgia standard.
The leaders on our team that I meet with, they believe in it, they sell it, they push it to the younger players. I think somebody said the other day we had 38 or 42 new people, new. And when you turn over that much, you better have a nucleus around them that can keep them grounded. And that's what we've been able to sustain at Georgia.
And one of those players, Captain Carson Beck.
There's a couple guys out there playing for the first time in a Georgia uniform. So for me, being a starter last year, coming back, it being my second year, just communicating to those guys, lean on me. If you know there's an issue, a problem out on the field, if you don't know something, if you need help, come to me. I have confidence in understanding our game plan, what we need to do. So I'm gonna handle what I need to handle, and that's gonna get done. But if you need help, come to me. I can manage that, and I think that's something that I've really been trying to do as I've stepped into my second year.
Having so many early enrollees also can't hurt Georgia's freshman participation numbers. Having a spring and fall camp under their belts has to be a benefit. But then there's Nate Frazier, who led the Dogs in rushing against Clemson and only got to campus this summer. For Dawg Nation, I'm Cody Chapin.
An absolute tremendous job from our DawgNation utility player, Cody Chapins. All right, guys, in just a moment, we're going to have Davin Bellamy on. But first, this is DawgNation Game Day.
Nothing makes a house feel more like a home than quality windows. So trust the professionals at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll equip your home with energy-efficient windows and doors just right for you. Schedule your free in-home, no-pressure consultation. Get product samples, installation options, and a free quote. Log on to PellaGA.com and visit our new Experience Center in Duluth. Tell them Brandon Adams sent you. Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
DawgNation Game Day is sponsored by Cercheros, Lassiter Tractor, and Jittery Joe's Coffee.
All right, I am so excited to say we're going to have Davin Bellamy join the Game Day show right here. First off, I haven't had the chance to talk to you in person yet, but it is so amazing that you've joined our team. The insight that you can bring to us, I mean, it's invaluable. So happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much, and I'm so happy to be here, definitely.
All right, so the good thing about you is you can give us an insight of a former player that none of us have. So I want to talk about home games. First home game of the season, what do you remember about the pregame jitters, waiting all this time to play in Sanford after you've practiced all summer in it? What's that feeling like before you step out onto Sanford for the first official home game?
Well, always, especially depending on the summer and where the team is ranked, that first home game, it's going to be rocking. And with high, expectations, your fans are just, anticipating to see you run out there. So, there's some pregame jitters, of course, but you're playing in front of, when I was there, it was 93,000. Now I think it's 98, 99,000. But when you're playing in front of that, it's just get the ball going. You got the dog walk going on. You can feel the energy around campus the day before. Your classmates, some teachers are letting you out of class early. So just the whole feeling of the college, atmosphere just builds into the home game even before the game.
I think because of the difficulty of the SEC schedule, it's easy to overlook an opponent like Tennessee Tech because you're already looking ahead to the Kentuckys and the Alabamas. But from a player's standpoint, how do you stay motivated for an opponent like this when you know this is a game that you could easily overlook?
Right. Well, I think the first thing is, everyone's on scholarship. And these are the games where if you're a championship team, then you show that. If you're supposed to put a team away, then you put a team away. These are the games where you kind of judge your team. If you struggle in these games, that kind of shows a mental lapse, in the team. Because I can only speak about, my senior year and us wanting to do that revenge tour. It didn't matter, who we played, if it was in conference or out of conference. We just wanted to run through everybody, and that just sets the mentality for a team. And I think the culture that's been installed at Georgia, these games I don't really worry about. I don't really think about Georgia having trap games simply because, we play to a standard. We don't play to the scoreboard, or we don't play to an opponent. You don't get up, for certain games. You get up every day at practice and you really prepare practice like you're playing in a national championship. So I have no doubts that, we're going to come out here and do exactly, what everyone thinks we're going to do.
So when it comes to games like this, for the team, are you more focused on making sure you have the fundamentals down, or is this a game where you try some different things out, different scenarios, and see how you can accomplish them moving forward?
Well, I mean, honestly, fundamentals will never fail you, so knowing how Coach Smart, runs his, program, I know for a fact that that's all that he preaches is fundamentals. So if the fundamentals aren't there, you aren't getting on the field. Georgia, I feel like it's only week 2, so we're trying to create an, identity. So this is the game where you focus on that, identity, where if you want to be a physical team, then this is the game where you know that you're out matching that opponent. So let's get perfect at the things that we're going to put our hats on when it comes to SEC play. So in my opinion, and kind of just been around, the program, this is not the game where you try new things. This is the game where you sharpen your iron. And I think, kind of like I said before, we're going to do what everyone thinks we're going to do today.
In comparison to the 2021 and 2022 national championship teams, the last year we've spent so much time talking about the offense because of Carson Beck. But as a former defensive end, from what you saw in game 1, what have you made of the Georgia defense this year?
I think, the Georgia defense, it's in our DNA. In my opinion, we're LBU and DLU. So, I mean, we're always going to be fast, physical, and tough. That's the only players that we, recruit at Georgia. And you must stop the run to be successful, in the SEC. So we show all those things, and we continue to, show those things year in and after year out. But basically, what I saw last week was just us, stopping the run, being very exotic on third downs. Kind of like I mentioned, we brought pressure from everywhere. We confused, Clemson's offense, and I just think we got a real good core group that just has that Georgia DNA in them.
Okay, so since it's the beginning of the season, I'm excited to have you on every week, but I do want to get your outlook for the rest of the season. What are your early predictions? How far can this team go?
I definitely think this team has the tools to go as far, as they want to go, as far as the leadership. You have the recipe, for success. You have a veteran quarterback who's on a short Heisman list, and you got a great defense. Whenever you got those things, you're cooking with oil. So, but basically, we're playing in the SEC. Every game is going to be tough. It's always a little luck. What team can stay the healthiest? What team can stay out of trouble. But like I mentioned, we have the recipe for success. A veteran quarterback who's seen it all. He's played on the road. He's played in tough environments. He's been down in the second half. He's had to make last-minute drives. And then our defense is just going to be the Georgia-style type of defense that has been before I got there, or while I was there, and how it is now. And I definitely think it's just going to depend on – it's always some little luck in there, but just the leadership of the team.
I have to ask, one thing that we've talked about amongst the DawgNation team, with the way that the SEC is set up now, no divisions, more games, is this a season where the Dogs can have a perfect regular season, or is it a situation where it's going to be almost impossible for anybody in the SEC to have a perfect regular season?
Yeah, I think it's going to be almost impossible. I mean, it's tough. You got Texas, you got, Oklahoma. I mean, it's just so tough. And, we've been spoiled as a fan base to see our Dogs as, perfection, just after the season we be having. But at the end of the day, everyone's on scholarship and they have great, coaches too. Well, I think with how tough the SEC is, you don't have to worry about being undefeated. You can lose 2 games, and with your strength of schedule, all the, playoff makers are going to say, they lost to either Texas and Alabama versus a team that's not playing those teams every week. And so I definitely think perfection is what you strive for. But if we don't have an undefeated season, then it's not, all bad, because the strength of the schedule is so tough that every week is going to have to be a different, season in itself. You may have to bounce back and lose a game and, you know, but bounce back on the road. And I think that would show more characteristic, of the team than having an undefeated season, seeing how we deal, with adversity. Because when you get to those playoffs, there will be adversity.
Two more things. One thing I'm curious about, this is more personal, but as a former player, when you watch Georgia games now, what are the things that you look for most? Do you find yourself evaluating certain position groups, or are you more just paying attention to the game as a whole?
I'm paying attention to the game as a whole, but I'm a D lineman. So of course I watch the D line very closely. And like I say, I have a relationship, with some of these guys off the field even before they got to Georgia. So I'm always watching to see if they're using the moves that I know my trainer and, their trainer has taught us. But also, to be honest with you, it's kind of a aura thing for me. I think, when I was there, I tried to have I grew up watching, the U and how ecstatic and excited that defense was. So when I was at Georgia, being one of the leaders on the defense, I always wanted to instill like just when you make a play, it's a party. Let's dance, let's celebrate. And when I first got there with Coach Smart, he kind of didn't like that, but that's so intimidating to the other sideline just to see, a defense being fast and celebrating after every big play. Now, it's been 5-6 years down the line. I'm still seeing that energy of that flamboyant, physical, fast defense. And I know, that's something that, we try to instill and we see it's still going there. So I think when I'm watching the game now, a lot of people tell me, your class has so much of an impact, on where Georgia is now. I rarely think about that until people, bring it up. And then when I watch it and I start to see it a little bit. So I just watch the whole, just aura everything.
So my last thing for you is always going to be the...
I'm sorry to cut you off, but especially, so I was the first person to put on the gold shoulder pads, and I used to watch wrestling growing up, and I stood on the bleachers and looked to the stands, like a wrestler. And now to see everyone put the shoulder pads on and just go to the, bleachers and stand, like they're standing on the ropes, that brings me back to when I used to do it. And I love seeing that. I love it.
No, I'm glad that you cut me off because that's absolutely wonderful to hear. I think I've actually seen that picture of you with it on, but I didn't realize that you were the first one. You had to set the precedent for everybody else.
No doubt. And I just grew up watching wrestling, so, I'm on the tight ropes and I got these wrestling pads on. It made me feel like, Shawn Michaels or something.
Yeah, you need to go have lunch with Brandon Adams at some point because he's really into the wrestling too. My last thing for you will always be this. When the game is said and done, what's the one thing that you're hoping to see out of the Dogs today?
Just domination. Like I say, these are the games where, I judge if we're a championship team or not. How serious are you? When you have so much more talent than the other team, then, your offense should be a well-oiled machine and your defense should look overpowering and everything should be crisp. How's your mentality going into this game? Are you up and down, or are you just, steady and you just do your job? And that's kind of what I want to see tonight. And but in my opinion, I basically think we're going to do exactly what everyone thinks we're going to do.
Davin, I'll probably tell you this a million times before the season's over. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you be a part of all this. The things that you can tell us, again, are invaluable. So excited to have you on the Game Day show. Can't wait to see you on postgame.
Thank you so much, and go Dogs.
Go. Seriously, I love to see it. A new voice for us. I mean, couldn't think of anybody better. But I will say, first home game means the first time this season that Sanford Stadium and the University of Georgia are going to host recruits. And now that we're at the end of the 2025 cycle, this is where we're really going to start seeing those big 2026 and 2027 guys. I sat down with DawgNation recruiting insider Jeff Sentell earlier this week. Here is Sentell's intel. First home game of the season means Sentell's intel. Recruits on the scene for the only home game in September. Looks like this list is going to be a lot of 2026s, 2027s. Who are those key guys for you?
Yeah, we're not going to try to oversell this, Kaylee. This is a week where Georgia is going to love upon the 2026s and 2027s. There are going to be some commitments there. The core commitments will always be there. But I think this is a week where Georgia starts to make some of those high priority 2026s and 2027s feel like a priority. I know class of 2026 commitment, John Tavius Wyman. For folks, if you don't know that guy, Google that guy, watch his highlights. He is an absolute dog. In the running for Dog of the Year, maybe, with what he's done so far across 3 or 4 games of the high school football season. Nasir McCoy, a really talented safety man out of Buford, liked Georgia for some time. They call him NASCAR. He's had a Georgia offer for quite some time. I expect him to be in Athens on Saturday. You're going to see a lot more of those names that aren't really the household names yet. I wouldn't even expect a lot of the 5 stars in the 2026 class to be there in Athens. But again, it's a chance to see the Dogs play, not too early, not too late, and you get a chance to really get some front row primo seating inside Sanford Stadium.
Yeah, I do feel like a game like this is premier for a recruit for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a 2 o'clock kickoff. Not too early in the morning, not too late at night. Every recruit stream. And then on the other hand, we're assuming that this is going to be a game where a lot of freshmen are going to get touches, maybe even see some freshmen get touchdowns. Other than Nate Frazier, I feel like that's really good for these young kids to see.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of like the new faces, especially the new faces that weren't part of the 13 that got that good run against Clemson. You're going to see guys like Sokovie White, Nitro Tuggle, maybe more of Chauncey Bowens, maybe some Dwight Phillips. I'm going to tell you what, Kaylee, between Nate Frazier, we can call him Nate Dog, he's told me. Call him whatever he wants to, whatever you want to. And Trevor Etienne, I think you're going to get a 100-yard rusher out of that game, maybe even 2. But then you're going to see a lot of these names pop up on defense. You're going to see, Kaylee, right now, the second team, third team offensive line is almost exclusively freshmen. A lot of those guys will play against Tennessee Tech on Saturday.
You called it last week. I'm going to give you your flowers. You said that Nate Frazier was the one guy to watch. He exceeded all expectations. I even think maybe the ones that you had for him, DawgNation had for him. But based on your crystal ball that you had, apparently you knew something. What about this week? Who's going to be that freshman for you?
Offensively, I'm going to go Jaden Riddell, the tight end. I think he's a guy that is going to get a little bit more action, especially in the second half of the game. And here's what's going to be different for Georgia fans. Listen, I'm not breaking any news here when I don't think Carson Beck will play all 4 quarters. What's really going to be intriguing to me is to maybe see Gunner get some run. Maybe Gunner gets the whole third quarter, maybe some of the second quarter. And then the quarterback depth is really going to shine because you're going to see Jaden Rashada and you're going to see Ryan Puglisi. I think a great day for Georgia is if they can get all those quarterbacks some reps running the Georgia offense, and then they're going to have targets to get to. Can you imagine going down the list and, maybe somebody's throwing to a London Humphreys, maybe somebody's throwing to a Sokovie White, maybe somebody's throwing a Nitro Tuggle, on and on and on. You're going to see a lot of those, the depth of the Georgia football offense come to play. But then defensively, Kaylee, I think this is a weekend you're going to see a lot of wow plays. Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, I pity that second or third team offensive tackle at Tennessee Tech that's got to deal with him. Same with Justin Williams. The same thing with Chris Cole. I think those are some of the names that you're going to see make a pretty big impact defensively.
Last thing, it's coming when all is said and done. What's the one thing you want to see out of this Tennessee Tech game?
Everybody come out healthy. That's the main thing. You got to, the way I look at this season, some NFL folks have told me this, is you got to look at this season. Georgia might play 15, 16 games. You got to look at it into thirds. And what you want to do with the first third, Kaylee, is you want to make sure that first third kind of builds some depth, gives some rookies some run and some confidence. And then that second third of the season, you want to make sure that you get your veterans and you get those guys mixed into the game plan. And then for that last third of the season, you want to hope to have your ones ready to go and healthy. Now, this is the SEC. That's not going to happen. But you want to make sure some of those freshmen and second-teamers got enough play, got enough reps, got enough seasoning through that first third and second third to when you're going to have to stop gap some guys. You're going to have to spackle in some guys where the first-teamer might be hurt, might be missing a couple of games. So what Georgia's got to do, man, I mean, Kaylee, half the roster now is either first-year or second-year players. They got to get the bottom of the roster churned up so they can play winning football by the time November shows up.
Thanks, Jeff. For more with Jeff Sentell and recruiting for Georgia, you can check out Jeff Sentell's Before the Hedges show with me every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And Jeff's always going to have an article out after the game to talk about the freshmen we got to see. So make sure to check out DawgNation.com for more on that. Now, as we near the end, you know the impact players are coming. Here's my 3 impact players for today's game against Tennessee Tech. I would be an idiot if the first one wasn't Nate Frazier. Like I said to Jeff, exceeded all expectations of what we had for him. 11 carries, 83 yards, 1 touchdown. And don't forget that we didn't even really see him until midway through the second quarter. I imagine we're still going to get a lot of usage out of him today. Probably see him get more touches than we did last week. Nate the Gray, a lot of hype already on social media about him, so many comps. DeAndre Swift, Sony Michel, and of course you can't forget the tribute that he gave to the former Georgia greats. I think that this is just the beginning of a very long career for Nate Frazier, and I imagine that what he does out there today is going to be incredible, just like it was last week. Next, somebody that maybe we didn't get to see his full potential last week just because of gameplay, things like that. It's got to be Oscar Delp. Last year, 21 receptions for 253 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, keep in mind, he was playing behind Brock Bowers. He's not Brock Bowers, but he's still one of the veterans on this team, and we know that Todd Hartley has been recruiting at the highest level at the tight end position. So I think we could see Oscar Delp get a touchdown today. I still think that we need to try some different things out with the tight ends before we start SEC play, so whether it's him or Lawson Lucky or even, like Jeff mentioned, the freshman Jaden Riddell, I do think that we're going to see a lot of movement with the tight ends today, and of course that can't happen without Oscar Delp. And then last, somebody on the defensive side of the ball, we were surprised not to see him out there last week. It's Janelle Aguero. Last year, 12 games played, only 7 tackles, but a true freshman. And keep in mind, Janelle is someone that we saw on almost all the preseason breakout star watch list. We're finally going to get to see him in that star position today, a high impact position, and I think this is a great game for him to come back from injury. He could be a little bit more relaxed, but still show those flashy plays. This is somebody that we've been excited about since he committed to the G, and I'm finally ready to see what he has in store for us today at the star position. That will be our impact players for today's game. Now, as promised, we give it to you every week, filmed by our very own Brandon Adams. This is the Kroger Dog Walk.
Hello, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome into this Kroger coverage of the Dog Walk as Georgia gets ready to take on the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. I'm going to step out of the way, and the Dogs are making their way in. It's a beautiful day for football here today. You see Xavier Truss walking by. Georgia Bulldogs starting to file their way in. Jared Wilson coming in here there as well. What a start Wilson got off to last week in his first game as Georgia's center. You see Bulldogs running back Branson Robinson coming by looking sharply dressed here for sure. There's Tate Ratledge there as well. He's got the pocket square in. He's looking good here today. It is the Georgia Bulldogs making their way in to Sanford Stadium. As I was mentioning, wonderful conditions here, not nearly as hot as it might would have been for some September games of the past. Georgia tight ends coach Todd Hartley walking by. The Georgia Bulldogs getting ready for Tennessee Tech in the home opener. Gunnar Stockton's going to come by wearing a ball cap here today. A chance for Stockton to perhaps get some extra snaps with the opponent who Georgia's playing. You would perhaps be looking closely for that. Georgia defensive line coach Trey Scott coming by. Georgia coach Kirby Smart. Very different vibe from Smart than last week when complete and total game face on. You're going to see Carson Beck coming across the field division there for you there too. Sharply dressed with the Chuck Taylor and the Chuck Taylor sneakers, the Louis Vuitton bag. Smart taking time to visit with all these young fans, and I know that now Georgia's offering more of an opportunity to kind of get in here and be a part of the Dog Walk. If you get a chance to do that, What a great experience that is. Kirby Smart really taking some time to say hello to a lot of these young fans as Georgia continues to file in here today, getting ready for the game coming up against Tennessee Tech. Of course, all day long today, Georgia DawgNation gonna have game day coverage on the website at DawgNation.com. At the conclusion of today's game, the DawgNation post-game show. Go back and check for our pregame show live from Jittery Joe's there in downtown Athens. All of that going down here today. I'll also let you know that what you're not seeing coming through the dog walk here right now, our Cody Chafin's reporting earlier that Mikhail Williams did walk by, not with the rest of the team. He was wearing a walking boot. So pretty much confirming what we already anticipated, that Williams will not play today. Roderick Robinson also came by with him. That pretty much as expected. You see Georgia freshman KJ Bolden coming through. Bolden, one of those guys that made a big impact in his debut last week. Glenn Schumann, Georgia co-defensive coordinator, coming by, looking sharp as always. Georgia getting ready for Tennessee Tech. Let me remind you that our dog walk coverage is brought to you by Kroger. For all your game day needs, Kroger's got you covered. So start your shopping experience in-store or online at Kroger.com. Game day favorites for your watch party at home, your tailgate party here in Athens, and everything else. Make sure you check all that out. Enjoy the game. Stay close to DawgNation all day long. We'll see you after the game as well for the DawgNation postgame show. Have a good day, everybody.
A few things here from week 1 to week 2. I think the biggest improvement that we've seen out of Brandon is his fashion narration skills. Dog Walk now, Met Gala next year. For more on Brandon Adams, you can check out his post-game show that's going to happen directly after the game at the UGA bookstore. Make sure to stop by and watch it. Davin Bellamy will also be on Zoom to help with the post-game show as well. So great job done by Brandon Adams. As we wrap up here, I really have one final thought, and that's the fact that even though this isn't Kentucky, it's not Alabama, it is the first home game and the only home game that we're going to see in the month of September at Sanford Stadium. Whether you're in the stadium or you're watching it from home, enjoy it, soak it all up. The home game record that we've had over the last 3 years is undeniable, and it's games like this that make Georgia what it is. And I'm so excited to finally be back in Sanford Stadium. And with that, this has been the DawgNation Game Day Show. If you're in the stadium, please go have a beer for me. I'm excited for all of you, and we'll see you right back here on DawgNation.com for the post-game show immediately following the game.